Thank you, everybody, for joining today. So today's topic, we are going to discuss volunteer management software and if volunteer impacts the right software for your volunteer organization. And with me today is Liza Dyers. So Liza, feel free to introduce yourself.
Great, thanks so much, Micah. So I'm Liza Dyer, CVA, that stands for Certified in Volunteer Administration. I'm a volunteer engagement specialist for Multnomah County Library, which is here in Multnomah County, Oregon, generally the Portland metro area-ish. And I've been working and volunteering in public and nonprofit for over 15 years. And it says I'm muted, but I don't think I am anymore. Okay, sorry.
Not anymore. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So I live and work in Portland, Oregon, and one of the best parts of my job is just creating connections and finding connections and navigating systems, making systems more accessible for people, so that people can access volunteer experiences and be a part of what we're doing here at Multnomah County Library. I'm also an AmeriCorps alum, and I mentioned I'm certified in volunteer administration, which I've been for over 10 years. And in my volunteer time, I volunteer with Engage, which is an online journal for leaders of volunteers, and also with the Council for Certification in Volunteer Administration as well.
Just like Liza, I'm from the Pacific Northwest as well. But well, actually, I live there. I'm from the Kansas City area in the Midwest. Graduated from the University of Missouri in Columbia with a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. Big into fitness and nutrition. Love going on hikes with my wife on the weekends with a variety of parks and forests we have up here. And yeah, I work with small nonprofits to enterprise-sized organizations. So places that have multiple departments, branches, or locations. And now it's the chat's turn. Where's everybody else? Where's everybody else from here? Let's see how many people are from around. So feel free to jump in the chat, say what you do. I'll shout out to as many as I can because I know we got a great sized crowd. I see we're international already. I see some Canada in here. I see some Oregon. I saw some Texas, Florida, Chicago, New York, St. Louis, Missouri. There we go. Yeah, Southern California. So yeah, we're hitting all over today. Michigan, Vermont. Yeah, we're hitting about every state. We're international. Appreciate everybody here today. So what are we going to talk about? So some of the main takeaways. A lot of people from all around the world here, doing a whole bunch of different things. And we all have some same common problems that we'll discuss, like what some of the common problems volunteer service teams are facing. And then with that, we'll do a quick Zoom poll. I'll have 3 questions, and then I'll share another data point on why the right software tools matter. And then the bulk of today's webinar, it's going to be focused on Liza and her journey. And hopefully what you'll find is some of the tips that she'll share into finding the right system for your needs. And then before we get into the Q&A, I'll do a brief high-level overview of a volunteer impact. It's kind of focusing on the interface on the admin and volunteer side. And then just remember at the end, you'll receive some resources. One of them would be a link to any PDU credits for attending today's webinar. And then in the coming days, you'll receive a link to the recording, a comprehensive online demonstration, and a link to book a meeting directly with me to learn more about your needs and if our software is a fit. We'll save about 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. So let's just get right into it. So what are some of the common problems many of us may be facing in here? A lot of it has to do with a shortage of time and money. So it's kind of crazy. We live in 2023, but when most people meet with me, a lot of are still using like spreadsheets or some other tools not specifically designed to manage volunteer management software. So it just becomes a huge time sink. Like an example is intaking new applicants. So maybe there's a form on your website and it's manually entered on a sheet in the back end. And then maybe you're using just so many other tools that are disconnected. So like a separate thing for emailing, a separate thing for signing up, a separate thing for training. So it just gets all confusing and it's not giving you enough time to lead you to do your job efficiently and effectively, leading and engaging your volunteers, helping recruit so you can meet the goals of your mission. And and many of us like already here, we already know what this like what the solution may be, but a lot of the times it's not in our control to achieve to find that solution because one, it's not free finding the right tool. It costs money. So it's about finding the one that's going to meet budget. And then sometimes there's even another barrier beyond that. Maybe you do have the budget for new software, but you still have to convince leadership to approve that new system. And then the final curveball to kind of throw on that is making sure that the database that leadership approves for, you have the budget and you pay for, that it's a secure database that keeps all of your volunteer data confidential, safe, and secure. And what we hope is volunteer impact's a possible solution, an all-in-one solution to manage your volunteers in a secure database. And something people think about is like, okay, well, with all the varying systems, like how do we know which system's going to prioritize data protection? Uh, One easy way to tell is looking for an ISO certification. So ISO 27001, it's the world's best known standard for information for world's best known standard for information security. Having this certificate means that the vendor respects all of the best practices and principles in this international standard. And an important distinction to know is that it's much more important having the actual certificate rather than just simply following what the guidelines are, because the difference is when a system has a certificate, there's accountability in place. There's an independent body that's auditing the vendor once per year to make sure that these guidelines are actually being followed rather than the vendor saying, hey, we're following these guidelines. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open a Zoom poll. It's going to be 3 questions on here. And with all of the people we have here today, I'm going to be curious to share the findings on this. The first question is going to be which problem, just from that last slide, that you resonated the most from. So I'm just going to go ahead and open that, launch that poll here real quick. So like I mentioned, the first slide on here, and then this once you get to the second question, relates to how are you managing your volunteers currently, which briefly talk about a lot of people are still using spreadsheets or some other tool not designed for volunteer management. And then once you get to the last question, ultimately, in your opinion, what's most at risk if a change doesn't occur sooner rather than later? I'm just going to give some time for those to respond. We're around 60% have responded so far. So we'll give it a few minutes, and then once everyone submits the responses, I'll go ahead and share those. Okay, we have about wonderful participation so far. Right now we have 81 of 99 who have participated. Going to go ahead and end it in about 10 seconds here. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, ending the poll. Going to share the results. What do we have here? Okay. So from question 1, which problem resonated with you the most? Large majority, managing data in multiple and disconnected systems, and that's probably why we're all joined here today. So that's an interesting find here. And how many are, and it makes sense why 59% are using spreadsheets too. So that doesn't surprise me. I'd say around like 40% to close to half who meet with me mentioned that they're using spreadsheets. And then on VMS, and then something else other, feel free to share what other is on their common examples are like Access or a CRM that's not specific for volunteer management. And then there's a clear majority in the focusing on volunteer turnover and disengagement. That just makes the most sense because that's everyone's everyone's goals to engage volunteers, grow. So that just makes perfect sense there. So yeah, thank you so much everyone for participating in that quick little poll there. And now the last data point I'll share before passing it on to Liza is that that there was this survey conducted by G2 a few years ago. For those who don't know who G2 is, G2 is a software review site where you can review several different types of systems. Including volunteer management systems where you can find like pros and cons for each of them. And the survey that they did a few years ago was they asked a series of questions on relating to job satisfaction and the tools people are using for their jobs. And an interesting find is that it was found a little over half of employees were unhappy at work simply because of the software tools that they're using, which I find very interesting. That just simply means the majority of people unhappy at work because they're not set up for success. Uh, and just taking that in, a, that's not a stable way for success in the long term for staying in that role. So it doesn't surprise me that the same survey also found that 1 in 8 employees quit a job due to mismatched software. So we have around 100 people in here. So that's like 10. This is affected like on average maybe 10 to 12 people who have joined here today, including me. So uh, quite an interesting find. It just emphasizes the importance of making sure you're set up for success, having the right tools in place. So let's get you working with the right software that makes you feel less frustrated and rather more empowered and productive when you do your job. So now it's time to hear from Liza, who achieved just that.
Awesome. So,
Thank you.
just to provide a little bit of background about my organization and the way in which we involve volunteers in what we do. So, we are the oldest library system on the West Coast, and our history dates back to 1864. And so, we have a downtown Portland branch, and then we also have neighborhood branches throughout the county. And we have the honor of serving about 1/5 of the state's population just because of being such an urban area. And so typically, we engage about 400 to 500 volunteers within the library, both in person and online. And during the summer, that number increases to about 800 because we have the summer reading program, which engages kids and families in reading all summer long. And so we have a bunch of youth volunteers that come in just for the summer to do that work. And so volunteers, aside from summer reading, have a ton of different roles, like moving materials from one place to another. Since we're a big library system, things need to move from one place to another. Supporting English language learners, people who are learning technology, people who are job seeking, and also helping with public programs and delivering materials to patrons who aren't able to get into the library. And yeah, so we've got about 2 years under our belt using Volunteer Impact. And previously we were using Volgistics, which is another volunteer management system. We'd used that for a little over 10 years. And then we also supplemented that with spreadsheets for data that we just weren't quite able to get within Volgistics. So yeah, so those of you talking about those disconnected systems, we kind of had a bit of a puzzle piecing things together. And Micah, I am ready for the next slide. Awesome. Cool. So some of the challenges that we faced using the way that we had things before is that we were, here, let me step back and say one thing, which is that software and technology is a tool, right? And when you need a tool to serve a purpose, you need the right tool. So for example, I could hang a picture on the wall using the heel of a boot if I don't have a hammer, but it's not the right tool. So I think for a long time, Volgistics worked for us. It met our needs. And then we started to come out of alignment with the software, what it was able to provide. And so basically our volunteers and our staff who were supervising volunteers were not able to use Volgistics effectively. And so then a lot of that work just came back to my team, which is a team of 4 folks. plus our volunteers that were doing a lot of data entry. So remember I said 400 to 500 volunteers or 800 in the summer. And so we were doing things like entering paper applications and timesheets and logging time on behalf of volunteers who found the volunteer portal to be confusing. We created a lot of reports for staff, and sometimes we then had to, export data and then manipulate it in an Access database and then provide them with a spreadsheet. So there were just like a lot of frustrations around, okay, there was one way to do something, and if that way didn't work, we had to do a workaround. And I know that different systems work great for different people. It just was not working for us anymore. So we had too many workarounds. It was not user friendly for staff or volunteers, and it just felt like we were wasting a lot of time when we could be better engaging our community members. Okay, so this is some calculations about the challenges and the hours per week that we were spending approximately doing things like communicating to volunteers and staff, entering the volunteer hours data, onboarding, scheduling volunteers. And I have to say I'm very lucky to have a team of 4, and I know that from my past experience working in nonprofits that many places are a volunteer team, volunteer management team of 1. And so thinking about just all of these things that we were doing, it was taking multiple volunteers per week scheduled to come in just to do data entry. And it was just a lot of additional work. So there's some calculations on the hours saved and the value of the staff time and the ROI, or the return on investment. So that's pretty cool to see broken down like that.
Yeah, and one thing I just wanted to kind of like jump in and say is the way how Liza came up with these numbers is there's an ROI calculator tool on our website, and that's what she filled out to find out these values. And we find this to be like very helpful in terms of communicating to like leadership on like the impact and what you get out of investing in the volunteer management system. So that was just kind of just the one thing I wanted to mention on there. When you go on our website, you'll find that on one of our resources.
Cool. So a little about my journey. I feel like I'm, a hobbit going on a grand journey here. But, I want to say that even before we decided to switch volunteer management systems, I always kind of had a foot in the world of what are the options out there? What are my colleagues using? What is out there that we could maybe look into using in the future? So, but I really spent a dedicated amount of time searching for a new software in mid 2020 because most of our volunteers were paused due to the pandemic. So I was like, wow, volunteers aren't accessing the system, staff aren't accessing the system. This might be a good time to do a switch. So of course, everybody wanted new technology then, so it ended up taking about 2 years in between, doing this initial research to actually getting a contract in place, but it involved a ton of people. And we are a large organization, so we had my team plus the 50 or more library staff who supported volunteers. I surveyed them about what would be helpful for them because this is a product that they're going to be using. And then I also worked with staff in procurement for the library and then also the county because we're part of the county system. And then IT as well. It was hugely important to involve all of the different people so that we could really look for what the best product would be for us. So we researched all the various systems that were kind of like the top systems that I heard over and over people were using. I looked at other ones. I looked at review sites, did demos, looked at videos, did informational interviews and live demos with current users that I knew of, just to see how did they have it set up. I think that's really important to be able to see how it's actually being used. And then a lot of those happened kind of at the same time over about a year. So it was a lot of work that was in between all the other things I was doing. So we selected Volunteer Impact because it had all of those, those standard features that we relied on with Volgistics that Volgistics was great at, but it also had so many more features from our wish list that we were like, oh, wow, it would be great if it could do this, or it'd be incredible if we could have email templates so that we don't have a separate, Google Doc of the templates that we send to volunteers, all those things. So we made this wish list. And so we tried to figure out like what were the crucial features that we needed. A lot of the other volunteer management systems that we looked at were either missing one of those features that we had to have, or they were really cost prohibitive. Like there were some that I saw demos for, and they're like bespoke volunteer management systems, which I think is really great if you have a really unique system or a unique organizational need. But we needed something that was off the shelf that we could really configure and customize for us. So, and also that had, Better Impact has a great built-in support network because there are so many other users that are for us, in other governments, county or local government, and also public libraries. So my top three favorite features are reports, custom fields, and all the communication tools. It was really hard to pick my favorite feature. So we have been able to, over the last 2 years that we've been using Volunteer Impact, better able to support and connect with volunteers and the staff who coordinate volunteers. This has really become an essential tool in our toolbox for engaging volunteers and engaging community members in the work that we're doing. We actually now have time to do strategic planning and to plan out our priorities for the year and not have it just be, okay, we're struggling with the day-to-day of the volunteer management system, right? So, there are things that we had on our to-do list for years, like making the volunteer handbook more accessible or designing online trainings for volunteers and having those online trainings line up with our volunteer management system so we can track who took what and when. And so we just have also more resources available that can be translated into languages that our volunteers speak besides English. So that was something that we weren't able to do in the past because we were so focused on the day-to-day of running everything with logistics and spreadsheets and Google Forms and everything. So we've been really pleased with it.
Thank you for sharing, Liza. So the next thing, well, before we get into the Q&A, just kind of share a little more what like she was just discussing in terms of like her favorite features on this software. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen on the first starting on the administrator side. So just so everyone knows, everyone can have their own like login, and this is a web-based system. So so anyone who has their own login at any point will be able to sign in and see a summary of their program. So like right now, what we're seeing is the main page. And just let me know if everyone's able to see my screen. Feel free to give a thumbs up in the chat if needed. But right now I'm showing just kind of the dashboard on what you would see when initially logging in. So the common way how this software is set up is you can set up an online like application form, which a volunteer submits, and uh, and then you can be notified that you have a new applicant come in. So that's what ultimately prompts you to sign in and see like who applied right here. That's what this applicant is. It's going to carry over all of the information from your customized series of questions, which you can make as simplistic or as extensive as you like. And then from clicking this bubble, you'll be able to review the volunteer profiles. You'll be able to track which steps you need to complete, which you can customize through the onboarding process. And once you move them to this accepted active stage, it can be set in a way where volunteers who have the requirements can self-schedule for specific types of roles on there that they have the requirements for. And there's kind of a fun way you can unlock it. Liza mentioned on like online trainings, there's ways you can you can leave like specialized roles, like locked behind videos if you'd like. I'll show that once we get into once I dive into the volunteers portal there. Uh, but yeah, there's some other helpful like kind of alerts on here to keep you up to speed on any important information on volunteers. One of them being this expiring qualifications tab, where you can set a range of when you want to be notified when there's a credential expiring, like a background check or a training. So then within a click of a button, you can find a list of any volunteers who have a training that's expiring. And then you can send out an email, preferably using an email template. As you have an unlimited email template library, or you can send out emails via the software. Uh, and other communication tools that you're alerted from right here. Important things you want to recognize your volunteers for like upcoming birthdays, and anniversaries, so you're not missing a spot there. And you can set up other like custom searches as well. There might be certain things that you want to track particularly, like if you're managing the application process, maybe you want to track to see which volunteers that you're recruiting, you're onboarding, and there's specific steps they need to complete. Um, so from here, we're able to check and see if there's any volunteers within the search that we've created. And you only create this search once and you save it and you pin it to your dashboard. So you're always a click away from accessing those volunteers. And then you can send out a quick email like using a template. It could be used for a variety of different things. Like you can poll us for volunteers who have certain like skills or like requirements, interests. You can have as many searches as you like. It's all for this long. And I'll just show an example here, just how quick it is. Step check right here. Um, so like I said, it'll pull the list right away. So now I can just simply send an email. So, and you can communicate using an unlimited email template library. So we can inform Donna, Graham, Henry, Will. We still need your background check. It'll be personalized to them. And then it'll appear as the email that you're using with your admin login, which they'll simply reply, and then the communications will land in everybody's natural email inbox from there. And something else I just wanted to briefly mention is this software is also scalable. So this works for those who are in a single location program, but it's also possible to structure in a way should you like Liza work in an organization that has multiple departments with different types of volunteers and different requirements, which you only want certain staff seeing their own specific departments volunteers in our enterprise edition. So just understand there's ways to scale it out in that fashion. Uh, and like I mentioned, everybody's going to be using this software a variety of different for a variety of different things. So that's why we want to keep the ease of navigation as simple as possible. About any page you land on here, when you go to these menus, you can save it as a favorite, so you can be a click away from it. Like a common area a lot of people go into is like finding volunteer hours. So I save that specific page as a favorite, so I'm a click away from pulling volunteer hours. And you can just simply type in the date range from here. There's templated ranges you can use. You can have a specific criteria for them. And then from here, it's going to pull and show who all of our volunteers are, their total number of hours, grand totals at the bottom. And this can all be exported into multiple formats, Word, Excel, PDF, and many others. And then this is looking at all volunteers. Just know it's always possible to add any customizations to reports through our search and filtering. And something that's very helpful, and what makes me think why I find the software to be user friendly is when you learn how to search and filter volunteers, like for reporting, then you know how to make email groups and a whole bunch of different other ways to search and filter for volunteers, because it goes through the same process in any specific like search you filter by, which it's based on fields on their profile that can be customized. You can always save these reports, so you have a saved reports library, so you can always go back to for that specific type of report, and then generate it from there, and then export into other options if you needed to. So that kind of provides a brief summary of the admin side. Something that's also helpful to know, like what Liza said, is the support network. If you have a question, you can always reach out to our chat team, and we're typically responsive within 5 minutes since we're located globally. And then there's ways for self-help too. So like in here, we can search and find help articles, like how do we create training content on here, and it'll lead to articles that will show you step by step on how to do this. And there's also videos there too as well, if you prefer video formats as well. So the volunteers experience, what does this look like? go ahead and sign into the volunteers portal. Something to be aware of is it doesn't have to be on a browser version like how I'm signing into right now. There's also an app available on Apple and Android in the Play Store where should they prefer to log in through their mobile app, they can get to this exact same portal the same way. Um, and it's the volunteer experience starting from the application form. It's fully branded to your organization. So you can upload your own banner. You can change and modify the color scheme. So then it reflects the branding. And we try to keep this portal as simple as possible because we understand there's so many different it's one of the awesome things working in the volunteer sector is the diversity of the population. You work with everybody. There's going to be some with more of a background of some technology and some who aren't uh, as attuned to technology. So that's why there's not really a whole lot of volunteer has to get into. And if they need any help, they can always reach out to any of your staff on here in this contact tab. It's also possible to for them to access any like help articles on here too, for them to see for them to see articles on how they could work the portal. And then just about anything you can manage on the volunteers experience in case those need any additional help. It's possible to do things like record hours, assign them to shifts, add profiles them on the back end if needed to. But something that's really helpful is they're always going to know their upcoming shifts. They can even subscribe to weekly email reminders for their upcoming shifts. Uh, and if you want to, something that's really a fun tool you can use is you can recognize and reward volunteers who've hit certain criteria, like giving them virtual badges for achieving a certain number of hours. They can see your Facebook or X feeds in this portal here. Liza mentioned like document library resources for volunteers that they can access, which they can at in their own convenience download any important files, documents for them to access on here rather than having to reach out to you. So common way volunteers would use this is like for signing up, self-scheduling. You don't have to set every role in this fashion. It's just a common way to set it to where a volunteer they can self-schedule based on the requirements that they have so far. So I'm only seeing relevant roles I can sign up for. I can further filter it by an interest if I'd like to, through a category like so. And remember, like how I'm doing this on the browser version, this can be done on the in the app version too. You can see a summary of what service they're signing up for that you fully customize on here, which they can then sign up and they'll either be on the schedule right away, automatically confirmed or approved by an admin. There's so many different ways how you can set up the software to behave for your needs. And one of those is like even for like collecting hours, like a volunteer can log into their portal here, record their time for what service they did, where they'll select the date after the fact. Uh, and optionally, you can add other data points that you're trying to capture. So you can capture more than just the hours, but the value and impact of those hours. So like any incidents to report or other quantitative numbers that you want to track. So that way uh, you can capture the hours and the feedback. And like I said, this is just one way to collect hours. There's another way to do this with like a time clock. It might make more sense for instead of a volunteer recording hours after the fact to clock in and clock out on site, which they'll use their same username and password to do so, where they can clock in and clock out for what they're doing. And when they clock out, they'll be asked a series of questions should you want to set up any questions that you want to customize for info you're trying to capture on there. So that kind of provides a summary. They can always go back. The volunteer can see their own and track their own hours in the reporting section. And they can update their personal information. They can update their own any particular custom fields too, like any documents they may need to re-upload. But one of the features that make it stand out that Liza mentioned was online trainings. So there's ways in this portal where a volunteer can take any online web trainings in their training library, which you can make visibly available to them, or maybe you have it hidden on the back end and you share it through a link. Uh, and common examples of these can be for like orientation trainings, where they can review content that you place and you can make like you can drop a simple link to a YouTube video if you'd like. You can do like what I'm showing on here, make images or GIFs. And the quizzing's all done in multiple choice format. So you can set up as many questions as you'd like, set what the pass rate is, and then you can and once a volunteer passes these trainings, they can unlock other opportunities that have this requirement. So for like this hand hygiene training, maybe there's some specific volunteer opportunities that I can only see and sign up for once I have this training unlocked. Provides an interactive way for the volunteer experience. So those who are dedicated and they want to get involved more, they can log into their app and they can take more trainings and find more ways. And they can find more ways to get involved. It makes it kind of like a game a little bit. They anytime go into their little portal, unlock past more trainings, find more ways to get involved. It significantly improves the volunteers' experience, saves you an incredible amount of time. And with that, I'll go ahead and move on to the next portion of the webinar. So there will be an online comprehensive demonstration through a link that we'll send that everybody will receive. And there'll be other helpful resources too. So first, the one thing I do want to share is we're going to have several of these types of webinars too. If you go to betterimpact.com/events, there will be there will be other webinars that are upcoming. The next one's going to be towards it's going to be towards exploring software for programs that have volunteers working specifically with clients. So these common examples like a hospice is a hospice where a volunteer works directly with a patient, and you want to track which patient volunteers are working with. And this works with a whole variety of different services like therapeutic horse riding centers, pet therapies, and a whole bunch of different ones. So if you're curious, feel free to check out betterimpact.com/events. And then a little bit more about Better Impact. So like I mentioned, we're here to help company. We've been around for over 20 plus years. Our findings were hospice based actually. Our founder and CEO Tony, he initially built this was initially a passion project for him. He built this software for his residential hospice where his mother resided. And we've expanded and grown ever since. Not only are we in North America, but we're also in Europe and UK, and the United Kingdom, Australia. So we have a global impact all around. And our main focus is volunteer impact. But we do have other modules, like I mentioned, client impact. There's also donor management for donor impact and member solutions as well. And like I mentioned earlier, there's going to be some emails coming your way. There'll be a link to this webinar recording, a link to a comprehensive demo of volunteer impact, along with a link to book directly with me should you want to have a conversation about what some of your main software needs are and if we're a fit. So check that out. Those should be coming in the next couple of days. And then I'm also going to, in the chat, I'm going to drop a link for the PDU certificate. So those who've joined today can receive credits. And I want everyone to give a big thanks to Liza and everybody who's come in here today.